Right. Good afternoon, everybody. I just want you to meet Will Asbury of Guesthoo, and please, Will, tell us in your own words, what you do and how long you've been doing it for.
So yeah, we run Cornwall's first and largest Airbnb management company. I say Cornwall; it's expanded a bit outside of that now. So we've been running about 7 years. So we started in 2016. Um, we started with just one property, which was actually our own property. Sort of a property that's been in the family for maybe 30 or 40 years, and had done various things with it. So it had been let out through holiday let agents, who we'd had very mixed experiences with, but generally were not good for differing reasons. It'd been a long-term rental as well, but it's a converted chapel, so it's not suited to that sort of thing. We just put it as a family, just put it as a long-term rental because the holiday let market just wasn't working out for it. But we never understood why, because as a converted chapel, it's a sort of property that's perfect for holiday letting. It's not really suited to a long-term let. It's a really unique place. It's expensive to heat as well, so it's not really somewhere that you would live in the long term. Um, so we'd actually there was a year or two where we weren't actually doing anything with it, and we were going to sell it. And then Airbnb was sort of, had been around for a while, but hadn't really, was nowhere near what it is now. And we put it on Airbnb, and it was a fantastic experience. All the guests were great. We got loads of bookings, and just kind of turned it all around, really. So it was quite organic in how it started, because we had that one property which I was managing on behalf of the family, um, and thought, it was really quite quite a simple thing when you look back on it. Thought there's going to be lots of other people out there that could really benefit from what Airbnb has to offer in terms of, bookings, safety and security for guests, and all those sorts of things. But they
Mhm.
don't have either the time or the technical, knowledge to actually manage it themselves. So basically, just turned what we were doing for our own place into a service. Starting out in Cornwall and Devon, and basically managing other people's properties, um, on Airbnb, as a service. So yeah, it started from there, and as I said, very organic with just our own property. And now we have probably upwards of 150 properties. We manage all over Cornwall and Devon, but have about 2 years ago expanded into Somerset, Gloucestershire, a little bit of Dorset as well, near the Somerset and Devon borders, and also kind of Bristol, Bath as well, and Cheltenham. So those sort of towns and cities near those big areas that we're in. So yeah, it's grown a lot since then and changed a lot, but had very humble roots.
Wow. Wow. I just love hearing that. And I wish I had already talked to you just about that transition and this that one property was the catalyst of what's just happening now for you guys, which is really great. But also at the same time, recognize as well, like over the last couple of years, I guess with COVID-19 that took place and also the pandemic and that crisis and also the cost of living crisis. So firstly, I was going to ask you, how did COVID-19 or that crisis impacted your business? Because it impacted everybody,
Yeah.
every sector is, but particularly for yourself there and in the leisure industry as well. How did that impact yourselves in the hospitality, of course? How did that impact your business and what actions you take to overcome that particular challenge?
Yeah. So I mean, it was it was a pretty crazy time, I think. Initially, it was one of those sort of situations where I thought, well, at first I thought, well, that's the end of this business,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, I think you just don't. There was just so much uncertainty at first, wasn't it? And I think it's very easy to get caught up in the, oh, this is the end of the world kind of doom and gloom. But at that time, we had maybe, it was just me at that time. I was the only person that worked for the company. So it was a one-man band, and I had maybe 20, 30 properties, maybe a bit more. And we've never had an office because I've always worked from home, and the team do now. So even back then, though, it was very kind of it was very lean business. So I could very easily just sort of cut down to the bare minimum, and basically had no overheads. Um, in terms of kind of what I did as well, there was obviously holidays weren't allowed at that time, but you could still offer accommodation for specific things. So those reasons were things like people that needed interim accommodation. So say they'd moved house, they didn't have anywhere to go, or they didn't have a long let to move into. We also did some accommodation for doctors and other healthcare professionals that were brought into the area to help assist with the pandemic in Cornwall, and other work. During the times where work was still allowed for differing reasons, we could take work-based bookings as well. So we basically, things ticked over by having those sort of limited, bookings for limited cases that were exempt under the regulations at that time. So yeah, as I said, things sort of ticked over, but then it kind of, once things opened up again, it was pretty crazy, as you can imagine. So
Yeah.
we it was kind of the perfect storm of events, because you had people could only go on holiday in the UK, and for a limited period. So obviously everyone wanted to, that was where people wanted to go, and they'd been cooped up for a long time. So the demand for holiday lets in the UK was mental. Also, you had the combination of that with so with that factor, people, owners, new prospective buyers were looking to take advantage of that demand and purchasing properties. Um, also, you also had the stamp duty holiday. So stamp duty, a tax paid on buying second homes, you always have to pay that. So naturally, removing that tax, could be tens of thousands for larger properties, is
Yes.
obviously going to lead to a huge spike in people buying second homes. And then you combine that with the fact that people are also looking to buy them because to make money and take advantage of the opportunity. It just meant an explosion in the market. And I think for a lot of people as well, there was quite a lot of new buyers that maybe weren't experienced with holiday lets previously, and therefore they were perhaps a younger demographic and were turning to us, as you know people. I think younger demographic, when they think, if I'm going to book a holiday, they go to Airbnb straight, off the bat. Slightly older demographic might, they do more now, but they might think of your traditional holiday let agents. So combination of factors that meant we just had a huge influx of owners signing up with us. So we went from, we doubled in size in the space of under a year. So given the pandemic was what, 2020. So in 3 years we went from maybe 20, 30, 40 properties to 150 that we have now.
Wow.
So yeah, quite a rapid expansion. But it's an interesting sort of period, because I think whenever these sorts of events happen, you just don't know what's going to happen. And I think it's very easy to look at it and think, oh, well, that could be bad for us. With the cost of living crisis, again, going into that, the second part of your question, it's easy to look at these things and think that's going to be bad for us. It's going to, bad adverse economic impacts that impacts people's ability to spend. Owners might sell their properties, but it's kind of not really panned out that way for us, because I think you've got your more traditional holiday let agents have struggled more, because they just
Mm.
don't have the reach that Airbnb has. Airbnb, and we also list on other booking platforms alongside it, they're global. So you've got people coming from all over the world. So it's more shielded from the economic, our domestic economic issues, which do seem like they are worse in some other countries. So we
Hmm.
benefit from that influx of kind um, of foreign travelers as well, and it makes us kind of more shielded to that. And I think because of that, we've had, and the traditional holiday agents aren't doing as well, because obviously there's also a boom in international travel, and they are often domestically focused.
Mm.
It's meant that a lot of owners are thinking, we need to start looking for alternatives because this isn't working out, and
Yes.
that alternative is us. So it's not really, the cost of living hasn't really impacted us massively in terms of signups. I think it's potentially even been positive,
Sure.
which is super interesting again, because I think that the learnings from these sorts of events are, you just don't know how it's going to impact a business, and it's very easy to just see it from the doom and gloom side, but actually, you know, it's just so complex and there's so many moving parts, and things can actually turn out in the positive if you kind
Yeah.
of make the right decisions, I think.
That's great. That's great. I mean, that's really that really, just brings a lot of clarity. Because I was just wondering about that and how that worked out for you. And obviously what now, fast forward from COVID to now, what are your current challenges you have as a business leader, and how you try to overcome those now?
Yeah, lots of challenges really. I would say probably the biggest challenge, which I'd say is probably true of most, well, a lot of UK companies right now, is recruitment.
Yeah.
Um, and not, well, not just recruitment in terms of our internal team, not so much that side of things. It's more kind of just the labor market in general. I think it's a very difficult market. There's a huge shortage in a lot of areas over the pandemic, specifically in and as a whole, the UK had a big shortage in hospitality. So
Mm.
things like housekeepers were really short of, which impacted us a lot. Um, but in Cornwall and Devon as well, even more so. There's an even bigger labour shortage there. So it's there's just not enough people to meet the demand.
Yeah, sure.
So sourcing housekeepers is I would say, within that kind of recruitment realm, that's one of our biggest challenges, I would say.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Wow. And I will ask you, what have you found out about yourself personally as a business leader since you've been doing this?
Yeah, I think it's you can't do everything all at once, and
Yes.
sometimes you have to slow down in order to scale up, because if you try and do things too quickly, sorry,
That's okay.
I'll start that again so you can edit it. I
Yes,
think,
fine.
yeah, the biggest thing is to kind of, yeah, not try and do things too quickly, and because sometimes you've got to slow down to scale up. And I remember reading that quite a few years ago and not really understanding what they meant by that.
Hmm.
But if you try and do things too quickly, um, you will just reach these sort of bottlenecks, and
Yes,
it creates stress on yourself and your team. And you can't do everything all at once, and sometimes you need to accept that maybe you just need to say no to some things, um, and be a bit more selective about the work you take on, or in our case the properties we take on, because um, you can't, there's only so much that you can do. And I think that you kind of need to just focus on getting processes right, making sure you've got the right hires in place, all
that's
those
right.
sort of so that you can, rather than sort of explode in size and then always trying to be playing catch up, you have the capacity to grow into. Um, so I think it's kind of looking at your growth trajectories, knowing and kind of forecasting it, and doing those things before you get to them, so you can actually
Sure. Yeah, yeah,
grow,
yeah.
grow into it, as opposed to always hiring when you needed someone 2 months ago.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And last but not least, I will ask you, we got about a minute left. What advice would you give to an 18-year-old if they wanted to start their own business? What would you say to them?
I think mine would be, as a young business owner myself. So I started the business when I was 23,
Yeah.
um, 7 years ago. In the first couple of years, it was really small. It sort of just ticked along, and I wasn't really, had a couple of other projects I was working on and didn't put that much into it. It was really, as I said, the sort of just before this, a few months into the start, before the start of the pandemic,
Hmm.
where it was sort of focusing on it more, and it was beginning to grow. But still, I was young, and I still am, as a business owner of a business of this size. So I think what I would say to an 18-year-old looking to start a business is, don't let what you might perceive as a lack of experience hold you back, because you know in truth, no one knows what they're doing until they do it. You know, even older people, when they come into it, and they might have, you know, older people that we've hired within the business, they have experience in, you know, years of experience in many different things, but it's never going to be exactly the same. And
Yes.
they come into it and they're learning. So, you know, everyone that comes into a new experience has something to learn and something to grow in. And I think that don't be put off by thinking, oh, I'm young, I can't do this. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
age, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think it matters how old you are. If you're determined and you want to do something, then, you know, don't let it stop you. I mean, look at Mark Zuckerberg and, you know, all these sort of young tech guys that were billionaires by the time they were, you know, in their early 20s.
Come
You know,
on. Yeah, that's right.
you
Yeah.
make the right decisions and you're determined enough, you can. It doesn't matter how old you are, in my opinion.
That's so good. Thank you. Well, I would say thank you so much. I was going to talk